and gentlemen, to an all-new reaction and review. Tonight, guys, I'm taking a look at a Japanese animated film from 1991. That movie is Dark Cat. Now, I know two things about this movie. The first one is that this thing has by far one of the worst English dubs in the history of anime. Now, at least that is what I've heard. And I did find a clip on YouTube. It was about like 90 seconds long, and it showed how awful the dub was for this thing. And if that 90 seconds worth of proof is anything to go by, this thing is going to suck. But I know I could kick it over to the Japanese, but I really want to see how bad the English dub is in its entirety. So I've decided to go with the English dub, so this is probably going to suck. Now, number two, not only is the dub awful, but according to a lot of sources, this movie also borders on plotless and absolutely sucks. So, yeah, oh, and one other thing, I bought this thing off eBay for about $5, which then proved to be ultimately foolish because I just did a search on Google. There are at least 3 copies of this thing on YouTube. So if you guys really want to watch this thing, it's right there on YouTube. Go right ahead and watch it. But first, you might want to see if it's even worth checking out. And I don't even know if this damn thing is going to be any good at all. And the only way I'm going to find out is if I shut up and I push play. And I'm going to do that right now. So without further ado, it's time to kick back, relax, and check out Dark Cat. Okay, well, I can tell you this much, guys. The cat fucking sounds in this thing are really annoying. That's partially because all of them I've heard so far have had this really oddball echo on them, and it's very annoying to listen to. And also, yeah, this fucking dub is just as bad as I have heard. This is awful. So, wait a moment here. So, the reason why this woman had like a evil worm-looking thing crawling out of her mouth is because she had negative energy in her fucking body? Because she had negative feelings? What the fuck does that even mean? That is the stupidest explanation I've ever heard for, well, something that incredibly stupid in the first place. My God. You know, guys, I was really hoping, at least for the writing here, to be at least, you know, like, marginally decent, but I haven't even gotten, you know, that. This thing's really torturous. Okay, I have a question, and this is a real serious one. At what point is anything in this fucking movie going to make any sense? We, right now, guys, are almost a half an hour into a 50-minute film. At what point is any of this going to make the slightest bit of sense, and at what point am I going to give a shit about a single thing going on screen? You know, guys, this whole thing would be vastly less torturous if we actually had the sound effects in this movie. I swear to God, guys, that about 90% of the sound effects which should be here are either completely missing or are so muted you can barely hear them. And that, guys, is a horrible sign. Just talking about sound, just talking about the sound mix, and it takes a bad movie and makes it infinitely worse. You know what I mean? Well, guys, that was Dark Cat. Thank fuck that's done. No. Shush. Okay. So, let's talk about the movie. First of all, as I stated at the very start, this thing had a fucking reputation going in as just being an ungodly bad dub, and it most certainly is. I normally, guys, start off with writing, but in this case, I need to talk about this dub. This dub sucked. And I can tell you why it sucked. Our entire cast was either completely lifeless or were just screaming. I'm not even talking, guys, about hamming it up. I mean, they were just screaming at the top of their fucking lungs every time that they had to deliver a line. So it wasn't just a matter of, you know, I'm just going to ham it up. No. They just scream out their fucking lines, and it sounds awful. And, of course, those who aren't screaming it are just reading it as if it's nothing. and then they all sound as if they just took a bottle of sleeping pills and are struggling to stay awake. Imagine listening to this for almost an hour and not falling asleep yourself. That's how bad this fucking dub is. So, yeah, and mind you, guys, nobody here turned in anything I would say is memorable, unless we're talking about memorably bad. And even then, that's just the entire cast. Nobody here fucking tried. And you know, I'd be totally willing to write all of that off as just, you know, this being a fucking anime from 1991, and when most of those were dubbed, we still in the US did not really care. But I can't use that as a fucking excuse, because this thing wasn't dubbed until 2003. So at that time, we knew how to dub properly, we knew how to dub right, we knew at least the basics. And when I say the basics, I mean the actors have to say their lines in such a way that it matches the mouth flaps of their characters, and they couldn't even fucking do that. So we have lifeless acting that barely fits with the mouth flaps, and sometimes will either come up way short or just a little long of the time given to the mouth flaps, and it just feels incredibly lazy, it sounds incredibly lazy. And speaking of sound, I'm still going to hold off on writing. I want to talk about the sound mix on this thing, specifically sound effects, because, see guys, a really vital part of making any kind of a film, whether it be live action, animated, you know, whatever, is sound effects. You need them in there because it helps add a sense of realism to everything you see and hear. And the very fact that this thing goes almost completely devoid of sound effects is kind of sad. Now, the only one I can tell you will totally be able to hear is the sound of rain falling. But then again, I think that's because that was sort of worked into the score, and the score is still here, what little of it is here. And also, it's not really a sound effect as much as it's just background noise. So that's there. But anything else, such as the sound of tables fucking, you know, like crashing, or bodies like slamming into walls, or windows breaking, or walls cracking, or things frickin' exploding. Or a sword slicing through anything. There is either no sound effect there at all, or it is so muted and so quiet that you can barely hear it. And it really sort of makes a bad thing worse, because guys, we then have, you know, this god-awful acting playing to almost total silence because there isn't a whole lot of music here, you know, either. So, really, guys, it feels incredibly cheap in terms of acting and sound effects and everything else. Everything here just makes this thing feel like the cheapest goddamn thing you could ever see. Now, mind you, it is rather cheap. I bought it on eBay for $4. There are at least 2 or 3 copies of this thing on YouTube, one of which was uploaded by one of the actors, who apparently was a last-second replacement if what he wrote on that video's description is anything to go by. And I'm going to mention this, he actually turns in one of the worst showings here, and it's probably because he was a last-second fill-in, and probably was never handed the script until 20 seconds before he had to record. So, yeah, he completely phoned it in, but then again, so did everybody else. But he kind of shines. His character shines as just the most lifeless piece of shit. But then again, that's also because the characters suck. Now I'm going to talk about fucking writing, because I had to take care of dubbing and sound effects first, because those were like the big issues. The writing. This story would probably be infinitely better if we had an extra 20 minutes to give us some sort of backstory. Explain to us a few things here. How exactly does dark feelings and bad feelings lead to dark evil energy going into your body? How the hell does the dark evil energy merge with all of your negative feelings in order to form these worm creatures, which apparently are primordial evil? Why in the hell are shape-shifting cats sent to fight these things? Why are they shape-shifting cats? Where the hell did one of them get a pendant that magically turns into a sword, which is apparently able to teleport? Either that, or else that's the power of one of the cats. He's able to, like, teleport the pendant to him, so that way he's able to form the sword during the final fight. Why doesn't the sword make any sound when it slices into anything? Why exactly is this demon attempting to take over the world by turning people into primordial evil worm, beasts? Why the hell is anything here happening? There is no effort to explain a single piece of this. And so you're basically left, guys, with a 50-minute mess that makes no sense because there was no attempt to explain anything which is happening here. So yeah, guys, like an extra 20 minutes minimum would have helped this. 20 minutes of backstory to just try to explain to us what the fuck was going on. The very fact that this thing, guys, is 50 minutes tells us that they could have easily worked another 20 minutes in and wouldn't have had any problems at all. And it would still have been a reasonable hour and 10 minutes, okay? I am not asking for miracles here, but that would have helped this thing infinitely. And this here, guys, is yet another one of those rare cases where I'm not bitching because the thing is too long. I'm complaining because it's too fucking short and they don't explain anything, and it's a worthless, confusing mess. Now, while I'm on the subject of writing, I do want to talk about the script that was there for the English dub, because one thing which some people do not fully understand is when you are dubbing a fucking, anime into English or into almost any other language, when you have to translate the script, you then sometimes have to reword the lines so that way it fits the mouth flaps. And sometimes you also will change up words in order to make things sound a little bit more colorful. Apparently, the studio which dubbed this did not have access to a fucking thesaurus. I'm going to explain this. If you guys have a bottle of booze anywhere and you opt to watch this, I want you to take a shot every time somebody says the word fool. You will be completely wasted before the film ends, because that seems to be the only word every single person knows for someone who's acting like a fucking moron, is they are a fool. So, yeah, you will hear, especially, guys, in, like, the closing 10 minutes, you will hear the word fool dropped at least a dozen times. Any one of those could have been swapped out with any other word similar to, or rather to any other fucking, synonym for fool, and it might have made the dialogue seem a little bit less lifeless. Instead, it feels incredibly stiff because the only word anyone knows when it comes to insulting another person is fool. Or correction, we also have way early in the film, faggot gets dropped like twice, and I understand that faggot is not a synonym for fool, but goddammit, at least it fucking made things a little bit more colorful and different in terms of dialogue. Beyond that, guys, the dialogue here is crap. And that's because, again, there is no effort to explain anything which is fucking going on here, and we're stuck with two shape-shifting cats who are trying to fight demons for reasons that are never completely explained, and we have a love story that goes nowhere because our two characters are flat, lifeless, and overall shit. And yeah, guys, the writing here is a fucking disaster. God, what else is there to really talk about? Art style. I will talk about the art style here. Now, the art is not that bad. All right. If there's any positive I can levy, it's that at least this thing looks kind of sort of nice. At least if we're just looking at like still shots, or because there's a whole lot of recycled animation and some of it looks really bad. Example, there is one shot where we have a character, he's just standing there, and behind him is some of this fucking, evil ooze worm stuff. And we see basically it forming essentially almost like a white bubble, and then a piece of this worm like punching, like like punching through it, and then we see it again, the bubble, the punch, the bubble, the punch, and it keeps doing it. You see it like 15 times in this one goddamn shot. It's like, are you really telling me that you couldn't have found something that would have cycled a little bit better and wouldn't have looked as, you know, noticeably cycled? I mean, come on, guys. Animation, I totally understand, is somewhat challenging. But that right there was just laziness. And it really does take a product which kind of sucked in the first place and again makes it look infinitely cheaper and thus a little bit worse. The music here, what very little music is here, is fine. And once more, I would have preferred if we would have actually gotten the sound effects that should have been there, but I am not going to gripe on that. Ultimately, guys, when all is said and done, am I able to recommend Dark Cat? No. The only way I possibly could is if you want to watch it as a fucking curiosity, and as I said, you can find this thing easily on YouTube. Do not be as foolish and as stupid as I was and waste money on the stupid thing on eBay, Amazon, or elsewhere. It is not worth your money. This thing was a fucking disaster. I'm really kind of sorry I wasted the $4, but yeah, guys, if you really want to see how bad this thing is, YouTube will happily give it to you, and in fact, shit, a member of the cast even has it up. So go ahead, go nuts, look for it, and give it a watch, and you guys can then tell me if this thing is, if you actually found this thing to be, you know, any good. I most certainly did not. Well, guys, with that, we come to the close of another reaction and review. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, take care, and I will see you all in the near future. Peace.